Want to know how to turn your gold into cash and get the very best price for your golden treasure? Well, a friend asked me this very question recently, and I thought it would be a great subject for a video. With the price of gold setting new records and the price holding right now above $2,300 an ounce, a lot of people are moving to take advantage of gold's high price. Many miners who have hoarded their gold for years are thinking of this very thing, of cashing in on gold's high price. Perhaps you're thinking the same thing, what to do with your gold, or maybe you're just thinking of, well, when I do make that big strike, what am I going to do to turn my gold into money that I can spend at the grocery store or the gas station or pay the bills or whatever? I've seen several friends in recent times taking multi-pound gold collections and turning them into cash. But how do you get the highest prices for your precious yellow stuff? It's not at all difficult to convert your gold into cash, and there are a number of refiners out there who are looking to take your business and help you out. But there are a lot of options for gold that once you have it, once you've found it, to get the best price. And usually, well, for some types of gold, for a lot of types of gold, the refiner is not really the best option. There are other options. For some types of gold, the refiner is the best option. I'm going to teach you all the tricks of the trade, and when you're done with this video, you'll know how to deal with the refiner, but you'll also know what kinds of gold you probably don't want to send to a refiner in order to get the very best price for it. We're going to explore options for getting the most out of your gold, and there's different things. They all have their own advantages and disadvantages, but we're going to take a look into that, and by the time you're done with this video, you'll know all the tricks of the trade and what you need to know to get the most money for the gold that you find. Hey, I'm Chris Ralph, the professional prospector, and today that's what we're talking about. How to get the most money for the gold that you find in the field, because hey, finding gold is a lot of work, and even if you're lucky and really happen onto a really good patch or a pocket of high-grade hard rock gold, you still need to go through certain steps to convert that gold into cash. If you're looking to get the most money for your gold, the first decision you're going to make is to decide, what the urgency of the cash is and what kinds of gold you have, to sort it out into the different categories. Now, the important thing about a refiner is that the refiner will not pay you anything for beautiful specimens or anything else. You can send him in super valuable crystalline gold that you could get a real high price for someplace else, and the refiner is just going to pay you for the bullion value of the gold that's contained in the shipment that you send him. But if you need a quick turnaround, if you really are needing that cash bad, then a lot of times the refiner is the quickest way to turn your precious yellow into cash. But you don't want to send stuff that's super valuable in other ways into the refiner. You want to sort through your stuff and send the stuff that's best to a refiner off to a refiner, send the stuff that's best sold in other ways. You want to sell that in other ways. So a lot of times, guys that find a lot of gold will take the smallest stuff. They have dust or other fines, and they'll deal with it one way with the refiner, but the other stuff they will deal with in other ways. We're going to explore all that in this video. Just as an example, some months ago, I helped a friend sell a really nice crystal gold specimen that he had acquired. I would guess that it was probably about 2/3, maybe 70% gold by weight, weighed 17.5 ounces. And he sold 2/3 gold by weight means that there was maybe 10 ounces of gold. And even at today's price, $23,000, he sold it at $50,000, and it was at a time when gold was much lower. I think gold back then was more like $1,400 an ounce. And so, 10 ounces, $50,000, that gives you a real big yield. He got paid because there was beautiful matrix and rock with the gold specimen, and it was the overall beauty of that piece of gold and quartz and rock that got him the $50,000. If he'd have sent it off to a refiner, 10 ounces at maybe $1,500 an ounce, he'd got $15,000 instead of $50,000. So you need to know the difference of what kind of gold to send in and what kind of gold not to send in, and that's what we're going to explore. And the first thing you need to do is separate the gold into its basic categories. And the categories we have today, we're going to talk about fines and dust. These are the really smallest pieces, the dust, the really small little flakes and things. And then small jewelry gold. These are a little bit bigger pieces, little flakes, small pickers kind of thing. Medium-sized nuggets, we're going to talk about that. I would categorize medium-sized nuggets as being things between about a gram and about an ounce. So that's still fairly large. Up to about an ounce. An ounce is a pretty impressive find. So medium-sized nuggets. Large multi-ounce nuggets, okay, there's not that many of these found, but if you are lucky enough to find one, you don't want to be the guy who sends a nugget that could be sold for many thousands of dollars into a refiner and get less than a quarter of what you might get otherwise. So, large multi-ounce nuggets, then crystal gold in specimens. Now we're going to talk about crystal gold in detail and what crystal gold is. And crystal gold can be anything from really small pieces like a gram or so, all the way up to, like my friend's multi 17-ounce specimen, gold quartz specimen, and of course even larger. There's stuff even larger than that. So, crystal gold is something that is stuff that has real value more than just the bullion, because there are collectors that will pay good money for it. And finally, we'll talk about gold quartz suitable for cabochons. And these are a gold that can be cut into rounded dome gemstones that show the quartz and the gold together. They're popular, but they were super popular a little over 100 years ago in late Victorian times. But they're still very popular today, and a lot of them get sold. It's really a valuable market also if you have that. So let's dive right in and start first with talking about that fines and the dust. So the fines and the dust, this is kind of stuff that I would say is smaller than about 8 mesh. And you could kind of subdivide the fines and dust into 2 categories. From below 20 mesh, finer than that, really there isn't any market for that kind of real small stuff other than to melt it down and send it to a refiner. The other size, say from 20 mesh up to 8 mesh, there is a potential market for that for pay dirt. And that's still kind of on the small size for pay dirt, but it could be part of a pay dirt package that you could get some small gold like this. Now, there's a lot of pay dirt sold out there, and in all honesty, the pay dirt market is a multi-million-dollar market. There's huge amounts of this sold. People who, for whatever reason, aren't interested in getting out into the wild. Maybe they can't get out into the wild, and they want to get started and experience some of the excitement of panning for gold and maybe to practice for it. I've done videos on this, and I generally get in trouble because my attitude about pay dirt is kind of on the negative side. But, for people who can't get out and certain other reasons, it works perfectly good. But the problem is, if you're going to start selling pay dirt, you have to develop a market. It's competitive. There's other people out there. There's people that are selling it. The guys that are buying it are used to buying it from the people they're buying it from. And, you need to get your foot in the door and develop a sales channel if you're going to be marketing pay dirt. And if you want to do that, you can make good money at it. And you certainly can get more than the value of the gold that you would send to a refiner. But you have to develop a market for it. And then once you get a market, you may have an ongoing market if you have an ongoing source of gold that you can sell to regularly. The easy thing though for this stuff, for this fines and dust, the easiest thing of course is to send it off to a refiner. The normal price structure for the services of a refiner is they'll take your gold and the agreement will be that they will pay you a percentage of the value of the gold that's in your gold, or that's in the shipment that you send them, and they will charge you a fee for an assay, and they'll usually charge a small per ounce fee. So let's say you were sending in, I'm going to do a big number. Let's say you were sending in 10 ounces of gold. It's a nice and round number. That's why I chose a bigger number like 10. Nice round number. They might pay you 97% of the value of the gold. So if you had 10 ounces and let's say it was 90% purity, so then you'd actually have 9 ounces of contained gold, and they'd pay you for the 9 ounces, but they'd pay you 97% of 9 ounces, and then they'd charge you an assay fee. So, when you send gold in, no gold is 100% pure. All natural gold has some impurities in it. And so in order to see what purity your gold is, they'll pour it, melt it all. If you send them loose placer fines, they will melt it all into a button or a bar, and they will sample that bar, and they will tell you, okay, your bar, let's say, is 85% pure, and it's 12% silver and 3% copper, okay? And that's just what your bar works out to be. And so then you'll get paid for the gold. And a lot of times, unless you have much larger shipments, they won't pay you for that silver, even though there might be a half an ounce of silver. Maybe that's worth 10 or 15 bucks. And the assay fee they'll charge will not be a cheap assay fee. It'll be more like 50, 60, 70 bucks. So then you get into this problem where if you only send them 1 or 2 ounces, they won't pay you the 97%, they'll maybe pay you 95% or 94%. And the assay $50 or $60, whatever assay fee will be a significant part of your overall charge. And then, like I say, they also have a small per ounce charge, so they may charge you, like a $5 an ounce or $10 an ounce handling charge, because they have to refine it, and then they have to sell it to somebody. Oftentimes they sell it to people who make jewelry, or maybe they sell it to people who make bars for investment, that sort of thing. So they have to refine it and then market it themselves, and that's how most refiners' fee structure works. The refiners that are out there, they're not all the same. They may vary somewhat between what they pay, and you can, shop around. I would encourage you to shop around and get your best deal. You can look on Google for gold refiners and search through there and look at the terms that they offer and see, what works best for you. A lot of times people ship the stuff. If you're only shipping a few ounces, you can send it insured by US mail. If you're shipping larger amounts, you really want to have some tracked and insured thing that's going in. Even if you're doing it with the post office, you want to insure it. But for smaller amounts, it's easier through the post office. And when you send through post office, you want it signed every step of the way. So whoever receives it signs for it. They give it to the next guy. He signs for it. And the next person signs for it. And so you have a track of where the material's gone. And the same thing is true for any other shipments like FedEx or a UPS or something like that. Now, I certainly have talked to miners who have complained to me about various refiners, that they were upset and they thought that they were ripped off by the refiner and other things. And a lot of times, at least in a large part, this is the problem that is in the head of the miners. So let me tell you what these problems are so you can wrap your head around it and not get disappointed. The first thing is that almost all miners way overestimate the purity of their gold. I have people tell me all the time, oh, my gold is 98% pure, my gold is 95% pure. And the truth is that's almost never the case. Usually, even between 90 and 95 is rare and unusual. Typical purity might be between 75 and 90%. A lot of times purity of natural placer is in the 80s, and I'm sure that I will get miners who respond to this and say, you're wrong, Chris, my gold is 97% pure. And it's like, I'm sorry, I have all kinds of assay records going back to the 1800s to show that placer gold from various sources is running between 75 and 90%, with a few a little higher and some a little lower too. Some of the Nevada stuff that's pale electrum-y gold, gold that's rich in silver, some of that stuff is 50-60% pure. And so you got to be realistic about the purity of your gold, and you can do an assay. One of the things that I recommend. The other thing is that miners often get disappointed with what I call shrinkage in their material. So they will send 10 ounces of placer gold in, and the refiner will melt it down and pour a bar, and his bar will weigh 9.2 ounces. And the miner will scream, I sent you 10 ounces! And the refiner will say, you sent me 9.2 ounces. Because what happens is, almost all placer gold that's recovered by gravity, through sluice boxes or trommels, whatever you're recovering it by, it has impurities in it. And so it will have maybe a little black sand, maybe a little quartz, maybe some other iron oxides. And so you weighed out exactly 10 ounces. But yeah, there was a little tiny bit of black sand, but that was nothing, right? Well, that's why I tell people to melt that stuff themselves. Melt it yourself in your own crucible, pour your own bar, and then, if you weigh out 10 ounces and you pour it and it comes out 9.2 or 9.5 or whatever, you'll know that it wasn't the refiner ripping you off. It was just the impurities in your material. And add a little bit of flux, you melt it down, the impurities go into the flux, and you get a metal bar weighing what the metal part of your placer concentrates were. The other thing about that is, if you have a bar, you can take a drill and drill a sample, and even keep that for yourself. And then when you send it in, if the refiner says, okay, well, we sampled your gold and it's 84% pure. And you say, no, my gold is 93% pure. You can't pay me for that much less. Well, you have a sample that you drilled and took yourself, and you can go have that assayed independently and see what you get, and see if you get something significantly different than the refiner. If you don't want the refiner to proceed, you can have him send your bar back to you. But, if you get a second assay done and the other assay says pretty much the same number, then the refiner's probably not ripping you off. These guys have to have very careful procedures and be very careful about what they're doing, because they're handling a lot of money and a lot of valuable stuff, and they have to keep high security and high numbers, and they can't just, go ripping people, because that would put them at, once you as a refiner get a reputation that you're ripping people off, you're going to be out of business pretty quick. Let's take a look at some of this fine-sized placer gold that I'm talking about for this particular category.
This is what I mean by dust. You can see, the pieces along the ring of gold there are really small. Even the larger pieces, which are more to the right, are still awfully small. And, this stuff is really most suitable for melting down. To the right, there's a few pieces that are a little coarser that maybe could be possibly screened out and used for pay dirt. But this is the fines and dust I'm talking about. Here's some finds that I'd collected from various placer sources. A lot of the gold here is different colors, some silver rich, some not. But this lot weighed about just under an ounce, And when I melted it down, because I melted it down and poured it into a button, it was a little bit less than, it was just close to about 9/10. So I lost somewhere close to around 10% of the weight, because 10% of the weight was black sand, quartz, iron oxides, and other not gold junk. And so when it was melted down, that stuff went into the flux, and the actual metal itself was about 10% less than the total weight originally was. Just real quickly, I want to show you how easy it is to melt your gold down and pour a button or bar. Here I've got a little tiny furnace that actually runs on small propane tanks. I have mine set up so that I can run it off a larger propane tank with a hose. It's been run for a while, and so inside the furnace it's red hot, and I've got everything set up. And so now I'm going to go ahead and make the pour. And it's really not a big deal. Like I say, these furnaces are very available. They have them in this small size, but they also have them in larger sizes too. And it's real easy. And here I'm quick pouring out the material. I think that this pour was around a half an ounce. Pouring it into a cone mold that's made of graphite. And now I'm going to put the crucible back in the furnace.
Okay, our next category is what I call small jewelry gold. And this is a category of basically picker-sized gold, say from 4 to 10 mesh. This gold can be worth a bit more than the bullion value, but you need to find the right buyer in order to get that kind of money for it. Usually the buyer would be like a jeweler that does gold nugget type jewelry, the type of jewelry where the surface of the ring or whatever is covered with nuggets all right next to each other, that they're soldered on there. We'll take a look at that in a second. Now, not every jeweler does that kind of work, and so you may need to do some searching around to find the right jeweler that's interested in that kind of a gold that would like to purchase this stuff from you. A typical rate for this might be something in the range of about 30% over spot. And so it's not hugely more valuable than the gold contained in it, but it's not insignificant. It's up to you as to whether or not the searching and finding of the right kind of buyer is worth the extra effort. The other thing that this gold is good for, this small jewelry gold, it's great for pay dirt bags, especially the smaller end of this. The problem with pay dirt bags is you start putting bigger and bigger gold into the bag, and then you have to charge more and more, and there's fewer and fewer people that want to spend, $300, $400, $500 on a bag of pay dirt. There's maybe some that want to spend $100, maybe a lot more that want to spend $50 for a bag of pay dirt. So the smaller end of this you can afford to put into bags of pay dirt. So that's another option. But if you're not willing to go to the extra work of, finding a jeweler that's interested in this kind of stuff, or trying to build and create a pay dirt market for yourself, this stuff, because it's not hugely more valuable than the bullion value, this stuff can also be melted down and sent off to the refiner. And like I say, there are suggestions I made as far as melting down the stuff you send to a refiner and casting it into a button or a bar before you send it to the refiner. That stands for this stuff just as much too. Let's take a look at some of this smaller type of jewelry gold.
This is the kind of gold I'm talking about. This is actually something like 175 pieces of gold. Some of the really small stuff may not be into this class, but most of this stuff is. It's a picker size. I found these with a metal detector, and they make good pickers and are good for jewelry, and of course also prime real estate for pay dirt bags. Some mines produce an awful lot of this stuff, and if you find yourself in a situation where you're producing a lot of this picker-sized gold, well, it would be worth your time to either develop a pay dirt business or to find someone who will use it in making jewelry. And this is the kind of jewelry that's made with this stuff. They cast the solid ring base and back and then solder on there these picker-sized nuggets. You have to have quite a few of them to find the ones that with the right shape and that really fit together, because it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle.
Now next we have medium-sized nuggets, and Some people may disagree with me with what constitutes medium, but it's just the adjective I chose. This would be gold in the range of like about a gram up to just about an ounce in size. This size is best for single nugget jewelry. So you have a quarter ounce nugget or several grams. These can be made into pendants and they're really pretty. It depends a lot though on the gold itself. The value of this stuff is, typically in the range of 30 to 50% above bullion value if you can find the right buyer. Like I say, you may have difficulty finding the right buyer. The price of this too is dependent on the beauty and the character of the gold. Something that's just a flat slug with very little character will not get as much attention and not demand as high a price as something with a lot of curves and maybe a little quartz or a little iron oxide showing, that gives the piece of gold character and interesting appearance. This stuff is valuable enough that you probably don't want to send it to a refiner. There are markets open for it. Like I say, jewelers that do single nugget type jewelry, and oftentimes it's the same type that would use the other type of jewelry gold. Other prospectors, I've seen prospectors who prospect for a long time and maybe they have some finds and maybe they have some smaller pieces, but they'd like to just acquire a few bigger pieces of gold. I've seen prospectors buy gold like this. Another possibility, in addition to jewelers and to other prospectors, is eBay. eBay is a place where I've sold a lot of stuff over the years, although I haven't sold much in eBay in a long, long time. But there's potential issues and problems on eBay, but I will say that it's a potential market for this size of gold where you say it's like a gram to up to about an ounce. Let's take a look at some examples of this medium size, a little bit bigger size nuggets that, get a feel for what it looks like.
Here's a display of a number of ounces that are mostly in this class. The biggest one up top there probably weighs around 10 grams or about a third of an ounce. The rest of them are in the multi-gram kind of range. But this nugget type of gold is used for a lot of jewelry. Here's some nuggets that I wandered onto in a patch with my metal detector some years ago. And these are all nuggets in that size range. The three biggest ones at the top, the biggest one in the middle is a little over an ounce. The two at the top on either side are a little over half an ounce. But these are still in that range that make for good jewelry gold application. These nuggets can be mounted up as pendants, sometimes with or without a couple of diamonds or other jewelry accent stones built in with it. I've even seen a few jewelers selling big nuggets like just this directly, not attached to any jewelry, but just free gold nuggets, especially in tourist type areas where there might be people interested.
Okay, the next size we're going to look at is large multi-ounce nuggets. Now, finds like this are really, really rare, and not a lot of, 5 and 10 and 20 ounce nuggets are being found out there. That's a real unusual find. But if you're one of the people that find something like this, you don't want to let it go for just the bullion value of the gold that you found. This is a type of gold that really will go to specialized collectors. There are people who collect big pieces of gold, and obviously they have money, and making connections with these people is tough. And so selling this gold for a full retail price can be not necessarily easy to do. There are people who are in the business of selling specimen and other large nuggets and that kind of stuff, and they have the connections to make these kinds of sales. And if you sell to them, you're going to be selling at a wholesale price, not a retail price, right? Because basically they're going to buy the nugget from you and then sell it to somebody else and make money for themselves. So, it's hard to find something like this. I mentioned eBay with the last category. But you start getting into issues where there's just not that many people on eBay that will buy something like this. So if you have a 10-ounce nugget, and you're selling it for $30 or $40 or $50,000, depending on its character and appearance, there just isn't that many people on eBay that are looking for something that costs $40,000 or $50,000. When you're selling these medium-sized nuggets, and maybe you can sell something for $100 or a couple $100, even at today's prices, maybe you can find people that are willing to pay $300-400 for a little bit larger nugget. That's a possibility. But in this category where you're looking for, many tens of thousands of dollars as your minimum price, there just isn't that big a market on eBay. The thing that is available on this kind of stuff is there are auction houses that sell big pieces of gold. And I know a guy who found a really large piece of gold. I won't go into the details because he's kind of a little secretive about it, but he went to an auction house, and it was gold definitely in this category, and they auctioned it off. And the auction houses have contacts with people, with collectors who are willing to, pay 10, 20, 30, 50, and even more if you have the right kind of piece of gold. So, that's a definite possibility. These things really are rare natural works of art, and the price that I can't really say, oh well, this goes for double the bullion price or triple the bullion price. You can't really say that because it depends on the natural beauty of the piece. The more plain and slug-like that it is, the less it's going to bring compared to a piece with lots of character and twists and turns and maybe even a little quartz in it, that kind of stuff. Those kind of pieces sell for a premium over the other ones, although even a very slug-like piece of gold that weighs 20 or 30 ounces is going to fetch a premium. So, the auction houses become another possibility. But like I say, this is a rare find, and I don't know if anybody watching this video is ever going to fall into that category. But take your time selling it, because these are once-in-a-lifetime finds, and if you're going to sell it, you want to take your time and get the best price for it. Search around, talk to people, learn all you can, so you don't feel like you've been shortchanged when you actually do sell it. Let's take a look at some of these larger collector-sized multi-ounce nuggets. At least we can look at them and dream.
This is a 9+ ounce nugget that a friend of mine found with a metal detector in California. It's quite a prize. He still has it. This is a 33 ounce nugget that was found with a metal detector in Alaska. I've actually seen this in person. I don't know what the final disposition of it was, but these are once-in-a-lifetime finds, and if you find something like that, you need to be very careful about selling it. This is the largest nugget found in California with a metal detector. It weighs 156 ounces, and it was found in the 1970s. I don't know who the actual owner of it is, but it's on display at the Los Angeles County Natural History Museum. Every one of these pieces is unique and unusual. Each has its own size, and so research has to be done to make sure you get the best price for it if you decide to sell something like this.
Okay, our next category is crystal gold and specimens. And this is one where, crystal gold can be any size. I have pieces that are a gram or two that are valuable because they're crystalline gold. But they can be also very large and very valuable. Like I say, my friend who sold that piece for 50 grand, he it was a nice piece of crystalline gold, and the money he got was actually the wholesale price, because the other guy turned around and sold it too, and he made a profit. So it's a thing where crystal gold is basically something very special. Now, nice crystalline gold can sell for 5, 10, or 20 times or even more the value of the bullion. And for sure with crystalline gold, you don't want to send that stuff to a refiner because you really can get some decent money. I've seen pieces as small as a couple of grams for sale for a couple $1,000s, and even right now a gram is, it's not that much. This is, a couple $1,000s for a couple gram piece is, 20 times the price. When I was at the Tucson Gem Show recently, I saw a chunk. It was a big chunk like this, but it was mostly rock, and it had some really nice fine crystalline gold scattered through it. And I would guess that, just from looking at it, there's probably on the order of about a half an ounce of gold in this piece. And it was a big chunk of rock, but the crystalline gold was very fine and little bits and pieces. The asking price for that half an ounce of gold in rock was $45,000. That's a really amazing high price. You can see it may be 100 times the value of the gold in that piece. But really, these pieces are natural works of art. There's no question about it. And the amount of beauty they have is what gives rise to the price. There are collectors that are willing to pay for these really rare and unusual pieces. And the value of the crystal specimens is based on the type of crystal, the size of the crystals, the rarity of the crystals, and its beauty and how desirable it is overall. So don't think that just every piece of gold that maybe shows some level of crystalline structure is going to be worth 100 times the value of the gold, because that's just not true. It really is like an artwork, and it's like, is the painting in my living room worth $200 or is it worth $200,000? Well, it depends on the painting and who painted it and a lot of other details. But you could have a painting in your living room that's worth 200, or you could have one in your living room that might end up be worth 200,000. Just depends on who painted it and a lot of other details. And the crystalline gold is kind of like that. It's always well more valuable than what the value of the bullion is. But whether it's worth 2 times the value of the bullion, or 5 or 10 or 100, that depends on the beauty, how much of a piece of natural artwork that it really is. Now, the pieces that you see for sale at places like the Tucson Gem Show or other mineral shows, or online, from guys that sell that kind of stuff, it's not the way that the piece looked when it came out of the ground. Very, very rarely is that. Usually it requires a whole lot of work to bring out the maximum beauty in the piece. It's not just washing off the mud and saying, okay, it's done. There's oftentimes a lot of work that's done to develop the artwork, and the skill of bringing out this kind of art is something that takes time to learn. Especially the specimens need to be carefully cleaned and prepared before they're ready to be displayed and sold. And this ground, this crystal gold and specimens, really covers a wide range of ground. Like I say, it takes a lot of work to get them ready for sale. You may need to chip off some of the waste rock. You may need to chemically dissolve sulfides or zeolites or other kinds of minerals. Iron staining may need to be cleaned away. And sometimes even minerals like quartz need to be chipped off in order to bring out the gold that's inside the rock that you can't otherwise see until you get rid of the quartz. Sometimes getting rid of the quartz involves dissolving quartz in hydrofluoric acid, which is a very dangerous and a toxic material to work with. And so the guys that do this, they've spent a lot of time learning this art and learning how to really get the most beauty out of the specimens. I've seen guys purchase these specimens for, certain prices, and then, after cleaning, you never know what you're going to bring out. You may have an inkling of what's going to come out of the stone, but when you finally bring out this piece of art after dissolving all the waste away or chipping away or otherwise cleaning it off, you can go from a piece that, well, there is some gold here, to something that just is fantastic. And the whole art of learning how to do this is something that takes time and effort, and it's not something. It takes skill and experimentation in learning how to do this. And I know a couple of guys who've worked on it who told me, I ruined a lot of specimens before I finally got the hang of this, and that's true. So if you have a hard rock mine and you are into a lot of crystal specimens, maybe you want to learn and get the tools to do this. It takes time and it's not going to be easy, but the prices that they get for this stuff is really amazing. Let's take a look at some crystal gold specimens and talk a little bit further about it.
Crystalline gold comes in a variety of shapes and forms and sizes, and we're going to take a look at some of the different ones, but some just don't clearly fit into any category. And this beautiful piece, well, you can see there's various triangular shapes, and way over on the far left there's a single bipyramidal crystal of gold. This is a beautiful specimen. Some of the ones with these triangular shapes have quartz and iron oxides, while others do not. This actually came from the same pocket as the previous specimen we just looked at. Some have more irregular types of complex crystal shapes involved in their construction, as in this specimen. Sometimes the crystals have rounded shapes, as in the upper part of this specimen, or step-type shapes, as in the lower part of this specimen. Some have fantastic shapes that are just hard to describe or hard to even categorize. But the thing is, all of them are very valuable. And in fact, some of the most fantastic shapes, like this one, are some of the most valuable. I know that this is a specimen that's still retained by the guy who did the cleanup on it. It didn't come out with this clean a display out of the ground, but after some artful removal of waste material and cleaning of the specimen, ended up with this, which is extremely valuable. This piece, which is very pale yellow, is rich in silver, and the cross-hatched lines on this are sometimes called a herringbone or sometimes a chevron type of pattern. Sheets of flat gold, like this piece from Nevada, are sometimes given the name leaf gold because they're thin like a leaf. Leaf gold specimens can be small or can be quite large. This specimen is actually almost a foot tall, but it's thin, and so it's leaf gold. The gold on this specimen is tiny crystals linked and touched together. They hold together, but they're so small that the gold is almost like a golden fuzz. This is the specimen I mentioned earlier that probably has on the order of about a half an ounce of gold. Even though it shows gold over a large area, there's a whole lot of air there. And it's for sale, or it was for sale when I saw it, for $45,000, about a half an ounce of gold with some rock. It's an interesting and beautiful specimen of crystal gold. Another interesting and rare and unusual form of crystal gold is this ram's horn specimen, where you have wires that are pushed together and twisted in a circle. A common form of crystalline gold is when it has the gold arranged in wires, and this is a specimen from Colorado in a district that was famous for its wire gold. Here's another specimen from Breckenridge, the same district as the last specimen, but this one it's arranged in just a nest of wires. Here's a specimen of wire gold I found in the state of Nevada with a metal detector. It weighs about 20 grams, or about 2/3 of an ounce, and it's just a real beautiful piece. And whatever's necessary to fully bring out the beauty of these crystal gold pieces, whether it be chipping away some of the quartz, dissolving some things in acid, or oxidizing them, or other ways of cleaning a material off, when you do it right, they come out to be a fantastically beautiful specimen, and they can go for incredible prices, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars. So if you're lucky enough to find some nice crystalline gold, be very careful about selling it and be sure to get the right price for it.
So our last category is gold quartz that's suitable for cabochons. Now, cabochon, if you don't know, is a round domed gemstone, not cut with facets that you could see through, but opaque stones. They cut a rounded surface for gem use. And there's gold quartz that's suitable for being used like this. Now, rich gold, it takes rich material. It has to be, 10 to 25% gold. If it's too much gold, it doesn't look right, or it's hard to actually make a cab out of it. If you have too little gold, then you're just cabochoning a piece of quartz. So it has to be kind of in between there. It has to have very little virtually no cracks or fissures in it, because where you're working the cabochon, polishing it and stuff like that, if it's filled with cracks and things, it's going to split and fall apart. Or even if it makes it through the cutting and polishing process, you get it in a piece of jewelry and somebody bumps it up against something and it's going to fall apart. So you want stuff that's good and solid. You want a material that doesn't have a lot of iron staining or other stuff in it. You don't want stuff that minerals or quartz that has a lot of sulfides or things in it. You want pretty much quartz and gold, and pretty clean and solid. That's what it takes to cut cabochon quartz. Now, material like this is very valuable. It actually is almost as valuable as the crystalline specie type of thing, the crystalline gold type stuff. It's very valuable. It cuts beautiful jewelry, and cutting gold quartz, it can be very profitable. What they take is they take the pieces of quartz like this and they cut them into flat slabs so that they can then be cut into cabochons. And a lot of times they'll cut a flat slab, and maybe only this part of the slab will be, one part of the slab will be suitable for cutting a gemstone out of, and maybe the other part, maybe there's a crack, or maybe there's just no gold over there. So they'll have a slab like this, and they'll circle out, okay, we want to cut the cabochon out of this material in this part of the slab. The truth is that very little quartz gold ore is suitable for this. It has to be super rich, and like I say, it has have to have these other characteristics of being solid and not marred by other things. But it is very valuable, and it sells for a very high price. And so if you have that kind of stuff, maybe getting a slab saw and a diamond saw and being able to cut these slabs will be a very profitable sideline for you. Let's take a look at some gold quartz slabs and cabochons to get a feel for what this is.
Now here's some pieces of slabbed quartz gold, and you can see that they've taken the pieces of quartz and gold and cut them into flat pieces so that they can then be cut and worked into cabochons. The amount of gold is really pretty. The quartz is actually a little bit translucent, and this is just the top quality material for that kind of use. And believe me, it's very valuable. Here's an example of what wouldn't work for that type of use. You can see that there is some good gold and it's spread throughout the quartz nicely, but there's fractures and cracks and stuff all through it. And then there's brown iron staining from probably pyrite that has oxidized. And so, if you cut this, even if it held together, and it would be more likely to fall apart while you're trying to cut it, it just wouldn't look very nice because of all the iron staining and everything else. So this is a piece of beautiful find of nice gold. It weighs about 2 pounds and estimated at about 8 ounces of gold in it, but just not suitable for cabochons. This piece of gold quartz is exactly what you're looking for. It's fracture-free, iron stain-free, good amount of quartz, a good amount of gold spread through the white quartz. This is just the right kind of material for cutting cabochons out of gold quartz.
Now, I kind of hinted at this, that almost all gold in one way or another can be made into jewelry. The fines and dust, the refiners, when they process that stuff, they make pure gold, and a lot of it's sent to people who do jewelry. They mix the right alloys with it and use it for casting rings and whatever other types of jewelry that they're making. And then the small jewelry gold can be used for making those, rings where they've kind of cut and put gold over it and soldered on pieces that almost like a jigsaw puzzle fit together, the little flat pieces of gold. They can take nuggets and make pendants or earrings or other things out of them. So, there's a lot of things that can be done with making jewelry out of gold. And I've known guys who kind of made this a sideline, and they find gold and then they take a lot of it and make it one way or another into jewelry. And some of them even get into cutting stones to have stones to put in the jewelry. Or they'll, like I say, they'll melt their finds down to cast some piece of jewelry. It can be a very cool sideline, but it's kind of expensive to get into. The equipment is not free, it's not cheap, and it takes time to learn the skills. It's not something that you can just pick up in 5 minutes. It's a skill set and you have to learn it. Let's take one last look at some nice gold nugget type jewelry.
Here's the kind of thing that would take the full skill of a jeweler to make. You could pour the ring base itself out of fines mixed with whatever alloys it needed. You could do the gold nuggets soldered in there and then mounting the stones together. This would be a very nice men's ring, but like I say, high dollar and a lot of skill. This is another beautiful piece with gold quartz in there, a cabochon ringed by little diamonds and a bigger diamond at the top. This is another piece that would take all of a good jeweler's skill to make. This kind of thing, however, is much easier to produce. Basically, you can pre-purchase the loop that the chain goes through. The jewelers call that a bail. And then you're just soldering that onto the nugget. And so it's a simple solder job and really not all that difficult. So this is something that really is easily in the grasp of a way to make a lot better money for your nuggets if you can turn them into jewelry this way.
Now, gold is real money, and you can turn it into cash to buy whatever you really need. If you're in a big rush, often a refiner will be the fastest and surest way to turn your gold into cash. If you have nicer pieces, you don't want to do this. And I would suggest that, even if you're planning to be into prospecting, you should pick out and know the names of some refiners or some people who sell specimen and that type of gold, because that way if you do come into this kind of stuff, at least you'll know who you might want to approach in the future if you do end up with this kind of gold and you want to turn it into cash. It's nice to have potential people, or at least, some names that you're familiar with that you could turn to. Now, we all know that finding gold, it's not easy, okay? And it takes skill in and of itself. And before you can sell gold, you need to find it, right? And finding gold, that's the skill of the prospector. And I've written a book to transfer to you the decades of experience that I've gained in prospecting for gold so that you can learn it much faster than the time it took me. And I wrote this book. It's called Fistful of Gold, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book right now.
So this is my book, Fistful of Gold. You can see it's an encyclopedia distilling down my 45 plus years of prospecting experience plus my degree into the parts that you need to know. I spent most of 10 years writing this. It was not just a simple effort that, I sat down and wrote it. You can see it's like 250,000 words. It's not something you're going to read through in a day or maybe even a week or more. But it's got a lot of information and reference material that you can come back to. You can read it once and read it again and get more out of it because there's just that much depth of material in this. I wrote this book because I want you to have the skills to go out and find fistfuls of gold for yourself. And if you have the skills and know what you're doing and get out in the field and make a real effort, you can find significant gold. It's not easy. I'm not going to tell you that because, gold, it wouldn't be, close to $2,000 an ounce, which is what it is right now. It wouldn't be so expensive if it was easy to find. It's not easy. You just can't walk out into an old gold field and start picking up nuggets.
if the gold was easy to see and find, the old timers would have picked it up and taken it themselves. So you got to have skill. You got to know what you're doing. You got to be able to master what it takes to find gold, and you've got to have the persistence and put in the effort to find the material, to find the gold or diamonds or gemstones that you're looking for. Now, this book has geology, it has facts about gold, it has stuff about diamonds and platinum, but it's mostly about gold deposits, how gold deposits form, how placer and nuggets form, all the questions you probably wanted to ask. The book is available on Amazon, and I'll put a link to it in the description below, but you can look up on Amazon, Fistful of Gold, and by Chris Ralph, and find this book. Now, the book, if you look at it, it has a very high rating. It has like a 4.7 or 4.8 out of 5, which is really high. I mean, it's hard to please everybody, but I'm close to a 5 out of 5, not far from it, right? So it's been out. I've sold more than 15,000 copies of this book, and I've had tremendous response, tremendous positive response by the people who buy it. And I think if you buy it, you'll be just as happy with it. Now, in addition to my book, I also have a website that I do, and I'll tell you a little bit more about my website and show you some images from the website right now.
Now, my website is nevadaoutbackgems.com, and I'll put a link to the prospecting page, this prospecting encyclopedia page, down in the description below, but you can find it at Nevada Outback Gems. I sell some jewelry, turquoise, other gemstones there. I don't always keep the inventory perfectly up to date, so if you're interested in anything you see, do contact me first before trying to send me money or anything, because I want you to be able to get what you order. But the website has lots of different stories, old adventures, even some stories, true stories from the old-time miners of the 1800s. So I think it's something you'll find interesting.
The other thing I want to go back to is that all my comments, I want you guys to ask questions on the comments for my videos. I answer 100% of the comments that are made on my videos. Now, sometimes if somebody just says, "Hey, great video, I really enjoyed it," the comment may just be, "Well, I'm really glad you liked it," or if it's a simple question. And sometimes I get people who ask me questions. I would take a book to answer that question, and I recommend that they just buy the book. But I answer all my questions. I try to help people as much as I can. I'm here to help you. So if you're interested in gaining the skills, if you're interested in knowing what you need to know to be successful, follow along with me. Subscribe to my channel, hit the bell so that they'll let you know when I come out with new videos, and I try to do that pretty much every Saturday morning. And you'll enjoy with me, you'll come along with me, we'll have an adventure together, and we will find some nice gold and see what it's really like getting out in the woods, or the deserts, or the mountains, wherever we land, wherever the gold is, wherever the diamonds are, wherever the platinum is. Come along, we'll have some fun. And I'll see you real soon on the next video.